Hey everyone, welcome to Wolfpen's Gaming Den. Today we're covering the tutorial for the game Village Green, designed by P.S. Sylvester and published by Osprey Games. Village Green is basically a card-driven game where you're looking to play different cards to design your village, as it were, with the objective of scoring the most points to win the competition with the other villages, which are represented by the other players in the game. The game is designed for 1 to 5 players, so it can be played solo, and it is expected to be played in roughly 30 minutes or so. So with that said, let's look at how the setup for the game works, and then we'll talk about what you're really looking to accomplish in the game itself and how you score points and how you can set yourself up for victory at the end of the game. The game comes with these two primary decks in here. These are the green cards. These are the award cards. They can be identified by their different back colors over here. Shuffle each of these decks independently and put them out over here like so. You will take a certain number of these cards out of the game depending on the number of players you're playing with. If you're playing a full 5-player game, all the cards will be in use, but if you're playing with anything less than 5 players, you will take a certain number of these cards out and they will not be used in the game. Over here at the bottom right hand side, I will have a table that outlines how many cards you're taking out based on how many different play accounts. So just follow that table and take those out right there. Once you've done that, let's start off with the award cards. You will take 3 of these and give it out to each player in the game, and you will put it in front of yourself in a top row like this over here. So these are 3 award cards that I have been dealt out. This is the village card. So the game comes with 5 of these. Just randomly give one of the players, each of the player, a village card, and they will put it to the very top left hand side like here, like so. And with that, this is set up. Once everybody's been given their award cards, take out 3 award cards and put it in a common row in front of everybody like so, and then you will have the draw deck right next to it. Next, we'll do something similar with the green card deck. You will give everybody 3 of these. So I have 3 of mine, as you can see over here. These are private information, so you will always keep this private from other players, whereas your award cards are always meant to be public information. Once you've given every player 3 of these, you will lay down 3 in a common row over here with the draw deck right next to it. So this is the common area that will be at the center of all of the different players, whereas this will represent your own personal play area where you'll be playing out different cards over the course of the game. Randomly assign a start player card to anybody using any criteria which you may feel like, and with that you're basically ready to start the game. So what exactly are you looking to do in a game of Village Green? Thematically, you each represent one of the villages competing for a competition where you're looking to be the most prestigious, the most beautiful village of all the different villages out there. You will do so by scoring the most points that you can over the course of the game. Anytime you see a symbol that has this sort of like a ribbon on a card or anything of that sort, it basically represents the points that you can earn. So a purple ribbon basically represents points that you can earn, whereas a orange ribbon represents negative points. So you can both score points and lose points depending on how you end up playing. You will score points in 3 different ways. Your village card is double-sided, so if you end the game and it's still facing this side up, you will score 1 point that's printed right here. If you've used the village card, and we'll talk about how that will happen, and it's flipped over, you do not score the 1 point from the village card. You will also score points for any of the card played in your tableau that have the point symbol, and you can really earn those from these cards over here. So as you can see here, there's a pawn symbol and then there's a 2-point symbol over here. So whereas you might score this card with other criterias, because this point is printed right on the card itself, you will always score this 2 point if you have a card like this face up in your tableau. So you'll score 2 points for each of these, and these lake cards or pawn cards are the only ones that do that. And then next up, the main way you will score points are basically with these award cards or objective cards, if I can call it that. Each one of these basically lay out the criteria that you will score against. So you will basically look at what the criteria says, and you want to have cards that align with the objective laid out over there in that particular row or in that particular column. And that's where you will actually score the vast majority of your points. So with that said, those are the 3 things that basically contribute to the points that you're earning. And the way that will happen is, over the course of the game, imagine there's a 4x4 grid in front of you. So you already have the top 4 cards laid out over here with the village card at the top left. Imagine pretend that there are 3 more imaginary rows under meet in. So which basically would make 4 rows in total and 4 columns in total. Over the course of the game, you will be playing the green cards underneath this over here. So the green cards will go in a 3x3 grid, whereas whenever you play an objective card or the award cards, they will basically go on top of one of these cards, or they will basically go underneath the village card in 3 more potential rows over here. And then for cards over here, you will score the column. Cards over here, you will score the rows. That's generally what you're looking to do over the course of the game. So let's start by looking at what a turn structure could look like. But before we go into that, let's fast forward a little bit and pretend that we're a few steps into the game itself. And then we'll look at how a turn structure works. That hopefully will help illustrate this a little bit better. All right, so now we're a few turns into the game itself, and as you can see, we've got a few cards played out here. So we're sort of like a few turns into the game, as it were. You will always still start the round, your turn, with 3 cards, and you will end with 3 cards. So you sort of like still have a hand of 3 cards to work with. But generally, on your turn, you're looking to do one of 2 things. The first thing that you can do is you can draw a green card and play a green card. The second thing that you can do is you can draw an award card and play an award card. So how do those work? On your turn, you could draw a green card from either over here or from the very top of the deck and play it in your tableau. So it might look something like this. I could potentially pick up this card over here, and then I can play it on my play area. Now I can play it next to something that's already out there. At the very start of the game, of course, you don't have any green cards, so it doesn't really matter where you play it. But later on in the game, if it goes, chances are it might go next to something, or you don't always have to go next to anything. As a matter of fact, you could play the card that is not next to anything at all whatsoever, and that's perfectly legal. But you must make sure that you meet a certain set of criteria when laying down cards. So if it's not going next to anything, you don't have to worry about it. But if it is going next to something, then you have to make sure that you match the top flower on the left-hand side over here with the cards that are adjacent to it. So basically, the way that works is each one of these cards has a flower at the top left-hand side, and there are 2 characteristics you want to keep an eye out for here: the color of the flower and the actual flower itself. So different flowers will have different symbols. So this one, I believe, is a rose, whereas you can see over here I have 2 other rose cards in my hands, whereas I forget what this flower is, but this is obviously a different kind of flower. So whenever you're putting a card down that has other cards adjacent to it, each card that is adjacent to it must match either the color or the type of flower when you're putting it down. So in this case, we're putting down a blue rose over here. So here we don't have a rose. This is a different kind of a card, but it is blue. So we're fine on this end. This card is a yellow flower, but it is a rose. So we're fine with that one as well. And then this, of course, is an identical match because this is a blue rose as well. So this would be a legal placement where this is basically going next to 3 flowers that either match the flower type or they match the color in question. So this is a legal move, as it were. Now, it is also perfectly possible that you could play a card that is not next to anything. So let's say, for example, if on our first turn we played this card right over here, on our second turn we could actually play the card over here on the other side, not next to anything, or we could even place it further down, imagining sort of like, you're still within that 4x4 grid that we spoke about earlier, and that would be a legal placement as well. Of course, what it means is that in future turns, when you put down cards next to it, they must still meet the rules of adjacency. And adjacency does not include diagonal. So if diagonally there's a flower that does not match, it doesn't matter. You're not really trying to match it with those, as it were. So let's say we are a few more turns into the game and we have some of these laid out over here, like so. So on your turn, you can pick up a flower, sort of like a green card from either this row over here or from the top of the deck, and you can put it down over here. Now, it doesn't have to be the same card. When you draw it, you will add it to your hand of cards. So at that point, you basically have 4 cards in your hand, and you can put down any one of the 4 cards from your hand onto your play area. So that's one thing that you can do. Now, of course, on your turn, you might run into a situation where either you cannot put down a card legally, or there may be a card that you don't want to put down because it doesn't align with some of the objectives you're looking to meet. If that's the case, you can also choose to take one of the cards from your hand. So basically, you draw a card, you now have 4 cards, take one of the cards, and you will put it at the bottom of the green card deck, and basically draw a new one and replace it like so. So draw a card, and then play a card, or put a card underneath this deck right over here. The next action that you can do on your turn is you can basically draw an award card and play an award card. Now you're doing either one of the two actions, so it's not this and that or anything of that sort. You're doing either this or this. If you again draw one of the award cards, it works somewhat the same way. You will basically draw one of these, or you can draw from the top of the deck. You will look at the card. You don't have any other award cards in your hand, so there's nothing else to choose between. You will take that specific card and you will play it either in these three spots over here or in the three spots underneath this village card over here. So these are going to be your award cards in that 4x4 grid. So you can have a max of 6 award cards, 3 over here and 3 over here. You can put it on an empty slot. And again, it can be an empty slot that's next to something, or it can be on an empty slot that's next to nothing itself, as long as it's within that 4x4 grid. So as an example, if I drew this objective card, I could play it here and that's fine, but I could skip that one space and go here directly, aligning with other cards that I might have played out in that area, and that's perfectly legal as well. You can also play award cards on top of other ones. So you might pick up an award card and you realize that, you know, this will score this row or this particular column better than what you already have out there. So you can always place it on top of that. You can never do that with the green card. So whenever you play a green card, it must usually, and we'll talk about the exception, it must always go on an empty spot over there. So that's basically how the award cards work. And with the award cards, you do not have the option to discard at the underneath the deck over here. You do not have that option. That's only with the green cards. So basically those are the two things that you're doing on your turn. You have to keep the placement rules in mind. We covered the green cards and we also covered the award cards. Now on your turn, you can also, as a one-off exception, only once in the game, use the action on the village card itself. And by that, basically what I mean is, before you take your main action, you can flip this card over and you can do one of two things. The first thing that you could do is you can sort of like refresh any one of these two rows over here. And by that, basically what I mean is you can flip this over, you can take the award cards, put it underneath the deck in any order you like, and draw 3 new ones. So if you're looking to pick up an award card and you don't like the options, that's one way to do it. You can also do the same thing with the green cards. Take all the green cards, put it in any sequence you like underneath the green card deck, and then draw 3 ones. So you can do that once by flipping over the village card before you take your main action of the game. The other thing that you can do by flipping over the village card, and again, you can do that just once. So you can either do this once or you can do this other action once. And that is, you can sort of like take a green card. So it's basically take a green card and play a green card type of action. The only difference is, whereas a regular green card cannot go on top of another green card, you can take the green card in that instance and put it down on any card that you might have out over here. So that's one way to overplay basically a card. So I might, for example, take this one and put it down over here on top of this card. Once you put a green card on top of another, whatever is underneath it no longer matters because that is now covered up. The only thing that matters is the card that you have on top right now. Of course, the same placement rules still apply though. You still need to make sure that it legally matches the color or the type of flowers to every other card that is adjacent to it. So that's the special one-off action that you can do over the course of the game. You can flip this card before taking your action, either do a refresh or take a card and play a card and then basically overwrite a card that you have out here, a green card that you have out here, like so. The game will basically continue in that fashion until one of 3 things happens. Either somebody's completed their entire green section, and basically what I mean is, remember it was a 4x4 grid, so the green cards are in a 3x3 grid. Once somebody's completed their entire 3x3 grid, that triggers the last round. Everybody gets an equal number of turns, and then the game ends and you score up. The game can also end if this deck runs out, in which case, again, you finish the round and then the game ends, or if this deck runs out, you finish the round and then the game ends. So those are basically the different ways in which the game can end. Now, we haven't spoken about the symbols underneath these cards over here, so let's look into that and see what's happening over here. All the cards that you have in your hand, we spoke about these flowers, but they have these symbols underneath here as well. And that's a large part of the reason, that's a major way in which you will score points for some of these as well. And then some of these will also give you special actions over the course of the game. Let's start with the trees. Now, there are 3 different kind of trees that you can have on the different cards. They look somewhat similar, but there is differences. So for example, if we look at this, they would look similar somewhat, but obviously you can tell there are minor differences. So these are 2 different types of trees. And this is a different type of tree as well. Again, looks similar, but these are different. Cards might have objectives that allow you to score points based on certain types of trees or certain number of trees. So trees are important because of the objective or the award cards that you would have in the row or the column that you're putting them out in. Next up, on a card, you might see this, these pawn symbols. These pawns are basically just worth straight up points. There might be award cards that award points for these type of cards as well, but regardless of whatever else you might score, you will always get the 2 points in here. Anything else is a bonus on top of that. So that's these kind of cards that you have. The next kind of card that you can play on your turn are the structure cards. What these cards basically allow you to do is it allows you to take an immediate action right away, which is basically take an award card and play an award card. It basically works the same way as the that particular action as the main action itself, but you get to do this as soon as you've played this card with this symbol underneath it, like so. And then lastly, the one other kind of card that we want to cover is, and let me see if I can quickly find it in the deck, are these lawn cards. Lawn cards are special because whenever you place a lawn card, as you can see, there is no flower on the top left hand side. So whenever placing these, you can ignore the flowers that you have on the cards adjacent to it. So it almost sort of like starts you to reset and place other cards as it were. It also serves another function, which is that on a subsequent turn, these are the only kind of cards that you can play other cards over. So with this card, unless I do the village card action, I cannot play another card on top of this. But if I had a lawn card over here, on my turn, if I did take a green card action and play a village card and play a green card action, I could take this from there and play it on top of this one over here, like so. Again, when I'm doing that, it must meet the conditions of all the other cards that are adjacent to it. So placement rules still apply in that case. And with that, that's mostly the different things that you can do on your turn. We spoke about the endgame trigger, which is somebody completes their the 3x3 grid for the green cards, or this deck runs out, or this deck runs out. You will finish that round going up to the start player, and then the round will stop. Everybody will then score up their points. If your village card is still face up, you will score 1 point from that, so that's easy. If you have any of these pawn cards in your play area, each one of these will give you 2 points regardless of anything else, and then you will score points for these cards over here for each of the different. So these cards will score points for everything that you have underneath it, and then these cards will score points for everything to its right. Let's have a look at a couple of these just for an example and see how these might work. So this tells you that for each of this kind of flower, so this is very specific, it tells you the type of flower and the color of the flower as well, you will score 3 points. So you want to make sure you have as many of those underneath it as possible. Let's have a look at this one. Well, this is actually very similar, blue roses. Let's have a look at this one. What this basically tells you is this is the tasteful floral displays. So for each rose that you have out here, regardless of the color, you will lose 2 points. For each of these flowers that you have out here, you will score 2 points. And for each of these flowers out, you will score 1 point. For each lawn in that row or column, you're losing 3 points. And for each empty space, you're losing 3 points. So obviously, this is a little bit more involved in terms of scoring. So you might have cards as simple as this, or you might have cards that have more going on, such as these. Other cards will give you certain points based on fields, based on these kind of cards, based on trees, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And let's see if we can maybe pull out a few examples that can help illustrate that. So this, for example, gets you points for every 3 structures that you have in that row or column, every 3 of this specific tree type, or this tree type, or this tree type. This gets you, if you have no trees, you lose points. If you have 1 tree, you gain points. 2 trees, you lose point. 3, you gain points. So obviously you want trees in this row or column, but you want a specific number of them, and so on. Generally, you should be able to read the card and intuitively understand what the scoring criteria looks like for that. And that's pretty much it. Those are the rules for Village Green. Hopefully this helps you guys get the game to the table without necessarily having to go through the rule book. If you have any questions on any of the aspects of the rules, feel free to leave them down in the comment section. I'll definitely get to them as soon as I can. And in the meanwhile, if you enjoyed the video, do give it a like, subscribe to our channel. And in the meanwhile, good luck getting Village Green to the table. And hope I'll see you in the next one. Take care.